Welcome to the Holmlands Adventure Podcast. Storytelling inspired by adventure.
Welcome to the Holmlands Adventure Podcast. We're delighted to be joined today by Ian McIntosh. Those of you will know that we do a lot of work within adventure sports and have a particular passion for skiing and a particular interest in having conversations with Canadian ski pros. So, Ian, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on for an episode today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I just wanted to start. I've read that you first got on skis 2 months after you started walking. When you look back at your childhood memories of skiing, what is it that stands out to you from your memories of growing up with the sport?
You know, I think for me, it was just the ability to be free from anything. You know, when I went skiing, I wasn't tied to anything other than just my own free will to do what I wanted to do and be in nature and go fast and you know, feel the wind in my hair and you know, it's just, you know, as a young guy, I just think I really gravitated towards everything that skiing offers. You know, when I was really little, my dad kind of laid it out to me. He's like, "Hey, listen, you can either be a skier or you can be a hockey player, but we can't afford to put you through both." As a Canadian kid, this is kind of like, you know, the question maybe a lot of us face. And for me, it was no question. I was fortunate to grow up in the mountains of British Columbia, Canada, and skiing was very accessible. My family was all avid skiers, and I really liked the individuality of it, but also that I got to be out in nature and be outside and go fast. Whereas, you know, for me, I wasn't, you know, as keen to be in a hockey arena and kind of stuck inside and play team sport. I wanted to just do my own thing. So
I think I'm right in saying that you started you started with the racing side of the sport in your earlier years. Could you maybe talk to us a little bit about that, and then how you made the transition from the racing and being drawn over towards more the powder and the big mountain side of the skiing?
Yeah, you know, I started off racing, and I think, you know, a lot of us free skiers, at least of my generation, kind of started off in the racing world. It was what we had at the time, and for me, I really enjoyed racing. I really enjoyed it, the competitive nature of it, and challenging myself, and, you know, having goals to pursue, and so on and so forth. What I didn't like about it is it was just so regimented, and you know, I found myself shivering on a chairlift at minus 30 Celsius in a downhill suit way too often. And just, it was just a little too much for a young kid, I think. So I eventually, you know, my dad was, you know, huge avid backcountry ski tourer. Both my parents were, and he was taking me, you know, into the backcountry and staying at, you know, backcountry huts that we had near where I grew up, and I was being introduced to skiing powder and the free ski world, and for me that was just far more of a draw, just because I didn't have to be in this like super regimented like program. And I think, you know, especially in Canada now, they've kind of realized that the only way to really keep kids going on the ski racing thing is to allow them the freedom to go free skiing and ski powder, and you know, not just be stuck in training courses each and every day. But for me, eventually it got old, and I wanted to just be a free skier. You know, I didn't have any at that time any, you know, notions of becoming a professional free skier or anything. I just wanted to simply do my own thing, ski powder, and have fun. And that was really all it was about, was just having fun. And then, you know, eventually led me down the road to where I am today. But you know, I have a lot to thank for ski racing. It really, you know, helped build the fundamentals of being a good skier. And that's something that, that, you know, I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I was, you know, able to experience it, but I'm also glad I moved on when I did.
And when you were a kid growing up, who were you looking up to in the sport? Who were your idols and inspirational figures?
Well, when I was a ski racer, it was, you know, the crazy Canucks at the time. You know, all the Canadian ski racers. I mean, it was that generation, of Canadian ski racers, and obviously the speed guys. I was always into the speed disciplines in ski racing, so that's who I was really looking up to at that time. And then, as I started to transition into the free ski world and started watching more ski movies and stuff like that, it was the Shane McConkeys and the Seth Morrisons that really grabbed my attention and started to be the guys that I was really inspired by.
And when it comes to big mountain skiing, what would you say was your first big break in making that transition into that world?
There's several different things I think that allowed me to transition into that world, but first and foremost, I was just kind of pursuing the ski bum lifestyle. I didn't really have any real idea of what I wanted to do. I kind of had it in the back of my mind, watching ski movies, like that'd be a great lifestyle. It looks amazing. And then one winter when I was 19, I was living in Kicking Horse. It was the first year where they opened their gondola in Golden there and skiing there. And then that summer I decided to sell, my vehicle and my mountain bike and everything that I owned at the time, and bought a plane ticket to New Zealand because I just wanted to live the eternal winter. And when I was in New Zealand, I managed to get myself into a contest called the World Heli Challenge that was, going on at the time. Within that contest, I did quite well, and it was like my first real contest in the sport. And I met like a bunch of ripping Canadian skiers that were all pro or semi-pro, and they all lived in Whistler. And I grew up in the interior of BC, and when you grow up in the interior of BC, you kind of always hate on Whistler. Whistler is kind of like this tourist trap. You're like, why would I want to go there? It's just like super busy, and it's just a bunch of hype. But those guys all kind of convinced me, like, hey, you could move to Whistler and we're making ski films. You could be in our ski films. And, at the time I was kind of heading down the route of being a mountain guide, a ski guide. And so I was like, okay, I'll take a little break from that pursuit and move to Whistler for a year or two and just have some fun with it and see where it takes me. Being in Whistler, you're surrounded by, the scene. There's like, I think, vast majority of professional skiers in Canada live in Whistler. Revelstoke has now started to like be a little bit of a hub as well, but especially at that time, if you were a pro skier, you lived in Whistler. And so being in the scene here, starting to see and meet guys and ski with guys like Hugo Harrison at the time, who was dominating the free ski tour, and getting to ski with those guys and film a little bit with like small production, local production ski films. That was all kind of like helping kind of shape the skier I am today. But then it was really, through the free ski tour that really shaped the skier I was today. A lot of people don't know this about me, but, I used to like throw tricks off cliffs and, backflips and Lincoln loops and these sorts of things. And that was, I think that was really the Seth Morrison inspiration rubbing off on me. But then once I got into the free ski tour, the guy who was winning was Hugo Harrison, and he was just like going fast and stomping airs. And, you got to think at this time where, early 2000s, backslapping was still a very acceptable thing in our sport, in the movies and in contests. And Hugo, kind of paved the way for being like, that's not acceptable anymore. And I love that about his skiing. So, I did a couple of years on the tour where I was having some success, and then I was like completely exploding. And this other French-Canadian skier, Pierre-Yves Leblanc, kind of was mentoring me at the time, and he pulled me aside and he was just like, dude, you can't go 100% and expect to like stick every run. And that's what you got to do in these free ski comps. You got to stick every run. And so he's like, tone it down to 80%. And you'll probably start to see more success. And of course I did. 2004, I toned it down a little bit. Next thing you know, I'm second overall on the World Tour that year. In 2005, ended up third overall on the World Tour. That kind of got my name out there, got some recognition, got some initial sponsors flowing with maybe a little bit of travel budget and just gear. And then, I was able to kind of get the attention of TGR, Teton Gravity Research. And in 2006, they gave me an opportunity to come down to Jackson and film with them. And that was really like, that was the transition from like, okay, I'm starting to get known in this sport through the contest circuit and so on and so forth, to like, now I'm getting contract offers and companies are actually willing to pay me. And it was that first year filming with TGR that really opened those doors. So I always say that like 2006, that first year with TGR, that was when I became a professional skier, was after that season.
And so with the success that you had in the Freeride World Tour, and with the now looking back from today, you've been in countless ski films. When you reflect back at this point in your career, what are some of the highlights that really stand out to you?
I mean, for me, like on a personal level, like aside from like, individual, like, achievements, it was what I always dreamt of doing from watching the ski films was going to places like Alaska and skiing first descents and kind of exploring mountain ranges that free skiers have never explored. And through TGR, I got to do that for several years. And I got to do it with Seth Morrison sitting in the helicopter with me. And like, here's my, hero from being a young guy. And now I'm in the heli with him skiing first descents in Alaska. Now that for me personally was like, that's the ultimate highlight. Within all that, there's the winning Powder Magazine Best Line Awards or Breakthrough Performer or other nominations that I've got for awards or segments that I think, stood out for me personally. But really it really came down to like that childhood dream of like, exploring mountain ranges and skiing first descents. And that to me was really, really special. And then, fast forward from all that, it's like, the career constantly needs to evolve. And so then I took things kind of more of a foot powered approach in the last bunch of years. And I guess the most recent highlight was winning Powder Magazine Best Line from doing it on foot. And that was the first time anyone's been able to do that. And so that's kind of a real special moment for me too.
When you reflect on those successes and you talk about those highlights, I think outside of the skiing world, probably most people will be familiar with you for going viral with a huge crash that you had on a shoot in Alaska. Yes. What was that like in terms of being thrust into the media spotlight outside of the sport in a different way? And also from the sense of it being not focusing on necessarily all those positive accolades and all those achievements and accomplishments, but, the media putting that perspective on, being a crash and it almost being, a bit of a disaster and having your profile elevated in a way that wasn't necessarily about, all the success.
Yeah. I mean, if I could undo one thing in my career, it would be like that. I hated it. I really fought with TGR to not release that crash. I got them to keep it out of the movie, which I guess looking back, I'm like, damn, I wish they just would have put it in the movie and then it probably wouldn't have exploded on like the internet. When it went viral, and the crew at TGR was like, yeah, we've put it out online. I was like, oh, great. Well, hopefully, it doesn't get much notice. And when that happened, I was actually flying to New York to do our ski movie premiere that season. And when I landed in New York, my phone just started going off with CNN and, all these like major news networks around the world. And, at the time you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. Actually, like all these huge news networks want to interview me. Yeah, it's about a crash, but like, maybe there's a positive spin on this. But then I started to realize pretty quickly that, this is just media. And this is how media works in kind of the major media outlets. They don't care unless you've got like some sort of like near-death experience or something super dramatic that they can tell, and that was kind of the one thing that I iterated in all my interviews that I did in the next few days, which was like 30 some interviews with major news outlets around the world, is, they would always ask me like, do you want to add something else? And of course, most of them, edited this out of my interview, but I was like, yeah, I just think it's really interesting that none of you wanted to talk to me when, for the last 10, 15 years that I've been like, excelling at my sport and skiing lines like this without crashing. But then, the second I almost die, every news outlet in the world wants to talk to me. And I just think it's kind of ridiculous. And, of course, most of them, like I said, edited that out. But I do think it's kind of ridiculous. And I think that's a major problem that we have in our society is that we don't care unless someone's like, unless there's huge drama or like someone's almost died or whatever in this case. And so, yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, you Google my name now and that's like the first thing that pops up. And I just think it's like a huge tarnish on my otherwise pretty successful career is like, this one day that I made a critical error. And that seems to be like, what a lot of people end up knowing me for outside of the sport, like you say. And I hate it. I really do. But at the same time, it is what it is. And that's just how the major media works. And so, I just got to accept it and move on and keep pursuing what I hold dear to me, which is, pushing the sport and myself and being in the mountains and nature and enjoying my life and living the dream that I'm so fortunate to live. And hopefully, my career will go on long enough that eventually that'll just kind of like fade away.
Something else which I know you've discussed previously was having breaking your femur and getting divorced within the same week. In the context of the negativity that came that you felt with the crash being kind of what thrust you into the mainstream media spotlight and other aspects like that happening in your life, you've always struck me as somebody who's very positive and puts a positive spin on things. So when you're met with these challenges, what positive outlook and spin do you try and take and put on those experiences, and how do you reflect back upon them now?
Well, I think as a human being, we should always be striving to grow as individuals each and every day and learn from our mistakes and try and be a better person each and every day in this world. And so, that's my other like big crash that I've had in my career. It didn't go viral because at the time the internet was not such a huge part of what we do. And social media wasn't a huge part of what we do, and YouTube and all these sorts of things. It was kind of before that time. So that crash actually, I think, was much more deserving of going viral because I snapped my femur. It was way more dramatic. But regardless, it didn't. But it was a huge moment in my life because, like you say, I broke my femur and I got a divorce in the same week, and that did a lot to me, and it actually changed me for the better. And when I returned home to my house here that I'm at right now here in Pemberton, and it was empty. My wife was gone and I had a busted leg. I could, go down this spiral of depression and like I ruined everything and blah, blah, blah. But instead I decided to look at myself and say, like, why am I in this situation? Why did this happen? And what can I do to change that moving forward, to not only recover from this injury and restore myself back to the career that I love and the sport that I love, but do it in a manner where I'm now a changed, better human being. And so I had to look deep, and I had to, see within myself, like it's not, I think a lot of people when bad things happen to them, they look externally like it's that person's fault or it's this fault, it's some other reason, instead of looking within themselves and being like, why did this happen? And then realizing that it's like internal things led to this. And so I came out of that stronger mentally and physically than ever before. And fortunately I have amazing sponsors that all stuck by my side and through the whole endeavor. And it took me almost 2 years to get back from that. And it was 2 years of struggle and tons of hard work. But I wasn't just going to the gym. I was trying to fix here, because that was the root of the problem, was my brain, inside my brain, my mind. There was something going on there that led to that critical error, not only with my marriage, but within my sport and my injury. And And I started to get the answers that I needed, and found myself being able to change myself, mentally first. And then obviously physically, I came back stronger than ever, just through my commitment to, wanting to return to what I do. But I think at the end of the day, I really realized a lot about myself. And I look back at that time as like, I needed to go through that. And it was I look back at it as a positive experience that I needed to have happen in my life.
I've heard you talk in the past as well about ego, and when you're on the ascendancy in the sport and the lines that you're doing getting bigger and bigger, and you're in a helicopter with one of your childhood heroes, Seth Morrison, all these amazing things are happening. How important is it for that reality check to come in? Are there times when you are standing on the mountain and you feel invincible and you feel that you can conquer the world, and is it important to then have that reality check to creep in to just self check and make you a little bit more self-aware?
100%. I mean, I think one of the realizations I had through that experience was that I was very ego driven. The ego is a powerful thing. We all have one. And I don't think it's realistic to completely shed your ego and to operate in this world without ego. But it's important to recognize it and realize when it's driving the ship versus when, you personally are making decisions based on your own personal desires. And what I mean by that is, am I going to ski this line just simply because I want to show the world how rad I am? Or am I going to ski this line because it's something I really, truly want to do because I want to push myself as an individual? And, I think before that accident where I broke my femur, I was really starting to get into this mindset, and up until that time where I was just like, I want to show everyone how rad I am. And I was like, that was my driving force. Like, I had this chip on my shoulder. I needed everyone to know how like sick I am on a pair of skis. And then that's going to give me like the satisfaction in life that I'm looking for, that I'm missing, that I felt like I was missing. But now, through realizing that, now I approach things differently, or at least try to approach things differently, where I'm making sure that I'm doing it for me first and foremost. And then, sure, if other people are inspired and stoked to see what I do, then great. But first and foremost, I have to always check my ego. And that day where I did the viral crash, fast forward a few years later, I fell back into those old traps where I was like wanting to show off again, and thus skipped all the necessary steps that I should have been taking to keep myself safe that day and make sure that I got down that line safely. And it was funny, like right after the whole incident, I'm still picking up the pieces at the bottom of the slope, and I'm thinking, man, I just fell back into my old trap of like letting the ego drive the ship. And like I say, ego can be a great thing sometimes. I test that drive got me to where I am in a lot of ways. But at the same time, you need to constantly check it and make sure that that you're pursuing things holistically and for yourself before you're approaching things for others and what others might think of you, and so on and so forth. And that's really just figuring out where ego falls in place, and where its importance lies within each and every one of us. And it shouldn't be the driving force of what we're doing. It like I say, we all have it. It's all we're all in connection with our ego, but it shouldn't be what's driving you. And that should be through all aspects of life, and as far as I'm concerned, socially, and through your career, money, materialistic stuff. A lot of people fall into the trap of like, I need all these things to make me feel whole. That's the ego. That's the ego is telling you that you need to like keep up to the Joneses, or have these materialistic things so that everyone else thinks something better of you. And that's where the ego is not very constructive. And that's where you got to check it. And so I learned a huge lesson about ego through that accident, and continue to do so these days. And I don't ever claim to, be a master of this mindset. I'm simply a student, and I will be a student for the rest of my life in trying to channel my ego in the right ways and make sure that what I'm doing is first and foremost for the right reasons.
Presumably, you still need to retain an element of ego in order to do what you do.
Of course,
with extreme big mountain skiing, you need to have that confidence in yourself and that commitment to the sport. So how do you maintain that balance?
Well, then that's the constant struggle, right? It's like I say, ego is something we all have, and I don't claim to not have one anymore because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But yeah, you've got to have confidence standing on top of a mountain. But it's the difference of I'm confident in myself to do what I'm about to do, and I really truly want to do this, versus I'm doing this to show off and so that other people will think greater of me. And as long as I constantly ask myself that question whenever I'm going into ski a big line, even to this day, and if the answer is I'm doing it to show off, then I will back away. And if deep down inside I know I'm doing it for me and because I want to, because I love to push myself, and because I love that feeling of putting yourself out there and pulling it off, and if it feels right in that sense of the matter, then I know that it's the right part of my ego that's driving the ship, and not the wrong part of my ego.
Something that motto that you carry is that doubt kills more dreams than fear ever will. Why is that your motto?
It's actually doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. And I love that. I read it somewhere. I mean, it's not like I didn't come up with this, but I love it because I see a lot of people in this world doubt themselves. And I'm not going to sit here and tell everyone like, hey, pursue your dreams and for sure you'll achieve them, because that's not reality. But what you will achieve is a happy life, and you will never have regret. And I see a lot of people, they fall into the trap of like, I need to do this because it's safe. I need to pursue this career because it's going to make me a good living, and that's safe, even though it's not going to fulfill your life and bring you happiness. Or I need to pursue, this relationship because it's safe, or whatever it may be, and what that tells me is that people are scared to fail. They're scared to like put themselves out there and really pursue what they want to be pursuing in life, because they're afraid that it might not work out. And I'm like, what I try and tell people is that's okay if it doesn't work out. I've had lots of things in my life that didn't work out, but ultimately along the way, I became a better person for it, and a more fulfilled person, and a person that was more true to myself, and ultimately happier. For instance, if you're a young skier out there these days and you want to pursue the world of professional skiing, well, it's harder than ever these days. So the chances are really, really difficult to pull off. Not impossible. Pursue it though. Go for it, 100%. You'll never regret it, because along the way, you'll meet amazing people, you'll have great adventures, and you'll become a better skier. And you'll always have that for the rest of your life. And then moving on in the rest of your life, you'll always know you tried because you weren't afraid to fail. And yeah, you did fail. Maybe you did fail. But like ultimately, you gave it a go, and you can't have regret. And I feel like so many people at the end of their life are filled with regret because they didn't pursue the things they wanted to pursue. They went for what was safe. They were scared of failure. So they went down the safe route, and they end up at the end of life full of regret. And I don't think anyone should end up at the end of their life full of regret. I think we should all end up at the end of our life going, heck yeah, I went after everything I wanted, and I gave everything I wanted, whether it was that relationship or that girl or that guy, or that career or whatever it may be. You tried, and you can never be like bummed on yourself for that. Ultimately that's how we should be pursuing life, in my mind.
One of the new initiatives that you're involved with now is, over the past couple of seasons, you've teamed up with UThrive ski retreats, where people can have the opportunity to ski with you. Could you tell us a little bit more about that initiative and how you got involved?
So UThrive ski retreats are awesome, and it kind of came to me at a point in my career where I'm looking to branch out and do other things. I've realized at this point in my career as a big mountain skier that like filming skiing is kind of like in the later half of the season. That's when the big lines started getting light and the conditions all line up. So if I focus my energy on filming skiing at that half of the season, that leaves me the whole front half of the season to go out and do other things. And UThrive ski retreats are a great example of that, because I not only get to go on a dream ski trip for myself, but I get to bring a bunch of people that might be fans or just beginning to know what I'm all about, or through the sport. I get to take them along on the adventure. So these are Rachel Findler, who started these ski retreats. I met her in Whistler years ago, and she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, Ian, this is what I'm trying to do." And I said, immediately, I was like, I love the vision. Let's do this. And let's go to places that I want to go. And if I want to go skiing in a spot, anyone else who loves skiing is going to want to go there too, because I've got a pretty good understanding of where it's awesome in the world, because I've skied the whole world. And so, I get to pick a location and we all get together and we have like either an amazing chalet rented or hotel, and everything's kind of handled. Like the beauty of these ski retreats is they're, in my mind, quite a fair cost, considering, and B, you get to just show up and everything's handled. We've got it taken care of. I'm going to show you where the good snow is. I'm going to take you on, the adventure. We've got like an amazing chef. We've got, everything's lined up so that, you can go on ski vacation, not have to think about a thing. And then ultimately your guide through the whole experience is a professional skier like myself, or she does it with other professional skiers as well. And it's growing. And for me, it's just such an awesome experience to connect with fans and ski with them, but also like have like a bit of a ski vacation myself. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's a win-win.
And so where's next? Where's the next retreat? Where can people look up and perhaps sign up to come ski with you and go on an adventure with you too?
So normally we do Chile. The pandemic's kind of stopped that whole trip from happening this year. So next year we'll do Chile. So if anyone who's looking to ski in the in our northern hemisphere summer, come on down to Chile with me. It's an amazing, amazing experience, both culturally and from the ski side of things, and being able to ski in August. It's just, if you're passionate about the sport, that's incredible. Unfortunately, we don't have that one this summer because of the pandemic, like I say. So we're going to go to Austria. And we've set the Austria trip up to be fully cancelable and refundable, just in case the pandemic is still an issue and we can't make it happen. But, Austria is an incredible country for skiing. They typically get really, really good snow, and the free riding there is off the charts. And, the beautiful thing is, not a ton of people skiing off piste. So, that's where I want to go. That's like, I went to Rachel, who owns UThrive, and said, Rachel, I want to go shredding in Austria because I know how incredible Austria is for skiing. Let's go there. And she's like, okay. And she makes it all happen. And that's the beautiful thing for me doing this all, is I basically just get to tell Rachel like what I want to do, where I want to go. She makes it all happen. We bring in the guests, and it's an incredible experience for everyone. So Austria is on our list for this winter.
And from all the places that you've traveled to over the years in the world, where's your favorite destination?
Oh, it's so hard to say. I mean, for me, it's every place offers something different. And I love the Alps. just because as a Canadian, I love the culture, the ski culture, and just the regular culture of Europe. And, with kind of Italy actually is my favorite place to visit. But, France, Italy, Switzerland, Austria, you know, anywhere in the Alps, I'm like so stoked to go experience. And what I love about being a free skier in Canada is the free ski culture in Canada is very strong. People are all getting after it. And so you got to fight for your fresh tracks here in Canada. But when you go to the Alps, most people are just happy to ski on piste. And so it's a lot easier to get fresh tracks day in and day out and all day long. And so I love that experience about the Alps. But every place has its own, beautiful aspect to it. Here where I live in Pemberton, British Columbia, there's one ski resort within hundreds and hundreds of miles, and so the rest is all accessible via either snowmobile to get into an area, and then hiking, or driving your car up to some mountain pass and hiking from your car. So there's an incredible amount of accessibility of terrain where there's just no people. And that's what I love about where I live. Alaska I love because there's just no place like it, where the snow sticks to the steeps, and the mountains are jutting right out of the ocean, and it's the terrain and the snowpack and everything's combined there. But Alaska is very inaccessible. You kind of need a helicopter or a ski plane or something to gain access. So it's very challenging in that respect. Completely different to the Alps, which are incredibly accessible. And then South America, Chile, Argentina are incredible in their own right. You ski in the Andes and the culture that's involved down there, and so on and so forth. So it's really hard for me to pick one specific place. Even ski resorts in the US that I really love. But ultimately, I think for me, when I'm going on a ski vacation, it's somewhere where I can experience culture, and maybe the free skiing mentality isn't as strong as where I live, which kind of in many ways is like this epicenter of free skiing culture. Just so that it's just that much easier to get fresh tracks all the time. So the Alps are always high on the list, and South America is always high on the list for that reason.
You've been heavily involved with Protect Our Winters for a number of years, and we've spoken recently with Mike Douglas and Izzy Lynch about the Protect Our Winters Canada faction. I'm just interested to know, on a personal level, how has being involved with that organisation affected you and your habits as a human being?
Well, first off, I've been with POW since pretty much the beginning. Like, Jeremy Jones is a good friend of mine, and someone who I look up to and is a huge inspiration of mine. And when he started it, I was like on board from the onset. But the problem for me was, as a Canadian, is, Protect Our Winters tends to like get quite political, because we realize at Protect Our Winters that that's a great way to drive big change, is from the top down. We got to change the way government operates and thinks, and that'll have a trickle down effect, help getting people to vote for politicians who give a crap about the environment is a key initiative of ours. But I was always disconnected with the American politics, because as a Canadian, I just can't relate to it. And it's a crazy world to me, and it drives me crazy. It drives me bonkers to even try and get involved. And then when I did get involved, I just have a bunch of Americans telling me to shut up because I'm Canadian. And so, now that we have Protect Our Winters Canada, and Mike Douglas is spearheading it, and Izzy, and I feel like I'm more empowered to make a difference within my own country, and both on a political front, and just in my own personal life, and inspiring other Canadians to drive for change and make their own personal changes. And then, ultimately what it's done to me is I'm way more conscious of my impact. We were just talking about UThrive ski retreats, and obviously that involves traveling around the world and so on and so forth. And what I do in this sport of skiing in general has a big carbon footprint. There's no doubt about that. But I'm way more conscious of it. And I make a lot of changes in my own personal life within the sport. I've gone way more foot powered approach to minimize my impact there, or at least have the image of a more minimal impact. Whether or not I truly am is I mean, sure, helicopters burn a lot of fuel, so I'm not using those and as much, and that does have an impact. But within my own personal life, I'm very conscious. I became vegan 8 months ago, and that's primarily because I see what the industrial agricultural industry does to the planet, and I felt like it's a way that I could make more of a change in my own personal life, because I'm not gonna just stop skiing and traveling. I mean, that's just part of who I am. It's my job. It's what I do. And I'm very fortunate to do that, but I have to have some sort of accountability. So, changing my diet has been a huge part of that. And the list goes on. I mean, I can give you all kinds of examples about how I use bamboo toothbrushes and, my what I choose to buy in this world, and how, I don't go to the grocery store with no thought into what I'm getting. I make sure it's as local as I can, and I'm looking for ingredients like palm oil and stuff like that I know have a huge impact, and that's all an influence of POW. It's like how can we all minimize our own impact, and then on a grander scale drive change from the top down, and that's I feel like for myself as an athlete, I have to have a responsibility to, I've got I've got an influence on an audience of people, and sure, I could just not care and take a stand back and just do my sport, as many do, but I choose that, if I've been blessed with this life, then that comes with some sort of responsibility. And my responsibility is to try and drive change and be a better person and make the world a better place. And, we're going through an environmental crisis, whether everyone wants to believe it or not, it's happening. Through POW, I've met some of the top climatologists in the world, and what they have to say around a beer after their, neat and tidy presentation is quite scary. And, there's a lot of things that we're heading towards that are inevitable, but we do still have the ability to drive for huge change. And, I've got a brand new baby girl in my life. I'm, a new father, and I think about her life and what, opportunities she's going to have at my age. And it would be pretty selfish for me to be a father and not think about her future. So POW's like kind of like a part of that whole deal, and has influenced that whole deal. But ultimately I became part of POW because that's what I'm passionate about. And so it's kind of like, the whole cyclical, relationship.
And when we talk about all the places that you love to ski around the world, and obviously it is a part of being a professional athlete within the sports skiing, you do travel a lot, and the use of helicopters, etc., being part of your career. When you are on social media and you're trying to promote the positive messages and key messages from the POW perspective, what is that interaction like with people, and the response when there is that duality of leaving a footprint and promoting a message? And how do you respond and interact with the criticism that perhaps comes along with what you're doing?
I think owning it is the key. Like, I know that what my job has a high impact, and I probably have a higher carbon footprint than a lot of people, or at least some. And I am a hypocrite, just like we all are. But we were all born into this fossil fuel burning, intensive industrial world. Like, we didn't create this world. I didn't create this world. I grew up in it. And as I grew up, I became educated, and through my career, I've become more educated. And so I'm trying, and that's all we can all do. But I think ultimately it's owning it. It's like, yeah, I'm not perfect. None of us are. How could we be? We were born into this society, this capitalist, fossil fuel intensive, industrialized society that puts our own comforts and ease of life and everything above the protection of our home, which is planet Earth. And so, I think owning it first and foremost, and then being like, okay, hey, you know what? I'm not perfect. I don't expect you to be perfect either. I don't care if you work for an oil company. I don't care if you mine coal. I don't care if you work in some, industrialized mining, corporation, or what you're involved in. Like, you can still care, because I'm a skier and we have bigger impact than some, but I can still care and I can drive for change, and everyone can. And that doesn't mean necessarily that we lose our jobs and we have to stop doing what we're doing. It just means that we're pushing and striving for a better future for all. And so I think first and foremost is just acknowledging that, I'm a hypocrite just like everyone else. And then, okay, now that I've acknowledged that, here's what I'm passionate about. And I'm allowed to care just like everyone else is. And I'm allowed to use my voice. And I think I'd be far more, I wouldn't say hypocritical, but I'd be far more, I don't even know what the word is, but if I didn't care and if I didn't use my voice, then what does that make me? Does that make me better? No. So, call me out for being a hypocrite. That's fine. But I'm still giving a really solid effort on my end, and I'm using my voice. And so isn't that better than not? And I think ultimately, as people, we need to realize that, like, it's not constructive to call each other out. This isn't what we're striving for. We're like to sit back on the internet and be a troll and just call everyone else out for their hypocrisy is not constructive. We should all be cheering each other on and patting each other on the back and saying, heck yeah, you're allowed to care. And I don't care what you do for a living or what you're involved in. You're allowed to care, and we should all care, and we should all strive for this better future. And the only way we do it is united together. And I think, a lot of powers that be, they want us to be trolling each other on the internet and calling each other hypocrites and making us feel bad for trying to take a stand. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we didn't create this world. So, we shouldn't feel bad, and we should all be trying, and we shouldn't be afraid to be called hypocrites, and we shouldn't be afraid to be called out for our own mistakes and our, living, because that's really what it comes down to. Is we all live in this world. I've got a snowmobile, I've got a truck, I live in Pemberton. That's how we access a lot of our skiing. I'm sorry, I'm gonna, once the electric snowmobiles are available and electric trucks are available, sure, I'll head down that road. Is that necessarily way better for the environment? Well, probably not, because there's still a lot of mining involved and battery production and so on and so forth. But ultimately, I think it is a better direction that we should be taking our society. And we need to be asking, like, what are the real solutions to the problem? And it can't just be left up to us as individuals. It has to come from the top down. But the only way we can influence the top down is to vote. And that's really what POW's about. And that's really what our message is about, is drive change from the top down, because we can only do so much. We can all go vegan, and that's only going to change so much. We still need change from the top down. And so, yeah, I get, a long-winded answer for sure, but like, ultimately it's just owning my own hypocrisy and then trying to convey my message through that.
Thinking about driving positive change from the top down, do you have any political ambitions on a personal level?
It's funny you say that. I'm quite passionate person, right? And I think that leads to a lot of people being like, you should be in politics. And I'm like, no, I am not suited for politics. Not because I don't think that, like, I couldn't do a good job, but I just think, like, politicians are held, I mean, aside from what's going on in the US and some other countries in the world right now with this nationalistic view where politicians can, be, just low down, awful human beings and still somehow make it into power. I don't think I would be a good fit. I just, I think they would be like, well, you're not educated enough. You haven't worked in, you have no history of this, blah, blah, blah. Now, do I think I could do a good job? Yeah, because I am a born leader and so on and so forth. Do I have any dreams or notions of being in politics? Heck no. I don't want anything to do with it because it's an incredibly tough job and there's just too much scrutiny involved. And I wouldn't be able to keep my mouth shut. I wouldn't be able to not tell people to f off, when they're, not being true, or being real, or if someone on the other side of the political spectrum is trying to call me out on my, I wouldn't be able to hold my tongue. And I just don't think I don't think I'd be able to pull it off. But, and ultimately I just don't desire it enough. I don't want that responsibility. I'm really happy that people do pursue that life, but it's tough because I say all that and then I'm like, well, it seems like politics attract all the wrong people. They're just kind of power hungry and don't care enough. And I'm just hoping that through people actually making a stand and voting for those who do actually have morals and want to govern in a way that is better for everybody and not just themselves, not just for their own power struggle and desire to pad their own pockets. If it's beyond that and it's true public service, then those are the people we should be voting for. But I will never be a politician.
So being a family man now, talking about your work with Protect Our Winters Canada, the retreats with UThrive, how do you see your career progressing from this point forward?
Well, it's funny, like I'm 38 now, and for the last couple of years, I've kind of been like, oh, I'm getting old for my sport. Maybe I should just, find other things to do. And then this last year, I decided to say, like, you know what, like power of manifestation. If you tell yourself that you're old and you tell yourself that like you got to find other things to do, then that's what's going to happen. Like ultimately people are going to think you're old and you need to find other things to do. I just had an awesome year. It got cut super short. We're talking like early March, my year cut short, and that's the time of year where I get the most shit done, and I had so much planned, but I still had an amazing year, and I've really kind of found the direction that I want to be heading right now, and it's skiing big lines. Like I just want to ski big lines. I want to do it with a foot-powered approach, and ultimately, I don't see a time when I won't be able to do that in the near future. So as far as a professional skier, I'm going to keep that going for a long time to come, I hope. And then ultimately, outside of that, I've been pursuing my Canadian ski guide ticket and, doing these ski retreats and guiding people in the mountains, I think is going to be an avenue for me moving forward. But right now it's like, the ski career is still thriving. So I'm going to continue to pursue that because I'm still super motivated too. And then, fast forward however many years, the guiding and their ski retreats and these sorts of things, I think will be a big part of what I do.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for having the time to chat today, Ian. It's been a pleasure talking with you. If people want to connect with you, find out more about the ski retreats and join you for an epic adventure in the mountains, how can they connect with you and where can they do that?
Well, social media is always a great way to connect, right? I try and pride myself in always responding to people's messages, whether it's comments or DMs on Instagram. My Instagram handle is my name, Ian McIntosh. McIntosh spelled MCIN2SH. There's a shameless plug for social media, but you can follow me there, or even if you don't follow me there, whatever, your choice is yours. But you can at least message me there, and I'll get back to you. And then through that, obviously UThrive's website, and you can also find UThrive through me on my own personal channels. So you can connect with me those ways, and ultimately you can come skiing with me. So I want to really open that up to people, like, let's go skiing together, and I want to have fun, and I'm into having a good time. I want to show you the best time that we both can have on snow. So join one of our ski retreats, and then in the coming, whether it's this year in Austria or in the next couple of years, and we'll have the best time, and we'll connect on a personal level. And everyone who's been on my ski retreats in the past is now, I consider, a friend of mine, and we are in constant communication. So I think it just it opens a lot of doors to not only have a good time, but create a lifelong relationship. So I really encourage people to do so.
Incredible. Brilliant. Thanks again, Ian. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.